I mentioned, traditional Protestant hymns were included among the sheet music packed with each GI piano. Soldiers found strength and comfort in their familiar strains and messages. But new hymns, like the hymn Be Thou My Vision, were also learned and assimilated during the war. American composer Roy Harris was chief of the music division of the Office of War Information during World War II. He completed his suite for piano in 1942. The second movement, entitled Contemplation, is based on the hymn tune Be Thou My Vision, which had entered the Irish hymnal in 1919 and was exported to the US during the war. The verse, Be Thou My Battle Shield, had particular meaning for soldiers, but it was the last verse that gave Roy Harris pause, quite literally. High King of Heaven, my victory won, may I reach heaven's joys, O bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, whatever befall. As a young man writing a piece to be played by his wife, who was expecting their first child, Harris contemplates the words, whatever befall, and seems to find himself unable to move on, as if the unthinkable realities of war are impacting him as never before, making it impossible to hold firmly to his vision without reconsidering the cost to himself, his family, and his country. The piece suffers a breakdown and enters an extended improvisatory cadenza, which returns 6 times to the whatever befall chord. As I play this movement, I invite you to remember the family members of soldiers who face on a daily basis the double sacrifice of separation and an uncertain future. Highly respected music director of the Boston Symphony, wrote, "We as musicians are soldiers too, fighting for the ever-growing spiritual need of the world. If music is our life, we give it joyfully to serve the cause of freedom, for the victory of freedom is also the victory of truth." In response to the Nazi propaganda machine, the U.S. Office of War Information was created, adapting the infrastructure that had been created in the 1930s for the Federal Music Project. The purpose statement for this agency included propaganda, morale, diplomacy, education, entertainment, and rehabilitation. Music, of course, played an important role in meeting every one of these objectives. Hitler's racism and his ban on jazz and swing music in 1939 helped to propel jazz into the mainstream of American culture. Jazz and jazz-influenced popular music were a patriotic rallying cry for U.S. servicemen as well as for their loved ones at home. It stands to reason that during World War II, love songs became more introspective and reflective because the singer was almost always alone. The next piece was written by the great Duke Ellington in 1940 as a long, abstract jazz instrumental piece, which he entitled Never No Lament. Lyrics were later added, and the title was changed to Don't Get Around Much Anymore. It reached its peak of popularity in 1943. formed United Service Organizations, provided centers for music making, listening, and dancing. In addition, they brought the still racially segregated troops together for social interaction and wholesome activities, usually centered around music. As USO centers sprang up wherever troops were stationed, government-issued field pianos were sent throughout the world. What were these pianos used for? Informal sing-alongs, impromptu worship services, dances, concerts, you name it. While Hitler's military were forced to sing together as a form of political indoctrination and community building, American soldiers sang to express their feelings about home, love, loss, God, and country. At this point, I usually play Sing, Sing, Sing with a Swing by Benny Goodman, but I don't have time for it today, so we'll move on. Shortly after the USO was formed, professional musicians began offering themselves to perform wherever they were needed, not afraid to be in harm's way. Comedian Bob Hope is remembered as a one-man morale machine for his nearly 50 years of performing for troops on every continent. In his memoir, Don't Shoot, It's Only Me, he recalled how singer Frances Langford got the biggest laugh he had ever heard. At a USO show in the South Pacific, she stood up to sing before a huge crowd of GIs. When Langford sang the first line of her signature song, I'm in the mood for love, a soldier in the audience stood up and shouted, "You've come to the right place."